The hard work of giving birth to your baby is over and you're just ready to sleep and snuggle your baby, right? Well, today's question comes from Brielle. She asks, I'm trying to prepare myself for what I should expect after my baby is born. I have a friend who's a photographer that offered to come take some pictures at the hospital. Is this a bad idea? Okay, there is a lot going on in the hospital after your baby is born. So today we're going to go over what you can expect immediately after your baby is born, what you can expect in the hospital for both you and your baby during your stay, and what you can expect during the discharge process. And I'll share a little bit of my own experience with you so that way you have a better idea of making an informed decision for yourself. But if we haven't hung out before, my name is Brianna. I'm a fellow mom and money coach, and here we talk about all things money in real life from moms for moms just like you. But with that, let's go ahead and dive into today's conversation. Now, it is important to note that your hospital's policies and procedures, as well as your and the health of your baby, is going to greatly impact what you can expect during your hospital stay. But on average, what you can expect immediately following the birth of your baby is immediate skin-to-skin contact. Now, this is going to help promote bonding as well as regulate the temperature of the baby. Now, during your skin-to-skin contact, your baby will most likely go through some different assessments or vital checks that healthcare providers typically assess during that skin-to-skin period. This is just to make sure your baby is healthy for the gestational age at which your baby was born. Your nurse will come in and will be pressing on your belly, and some moms do say that this can be more discomfortable, more uncomfortable. That's the word I'm looking for. More uncomfortable than some of their contractions. But I think it's very dependent on your pain threshold as well as what other medications are in your system. So for me, even though I had a C-section and I did have some, high pain medications, it was still uncomfortable for me, but I would not say that it was unbearable. Now, they're also going to be cleaning up any afterbirth fluids. You're going to have any wound dressing, especially if you have a C-section, any other tearing that occurred during your birth. Now, your baby will also receive a band, most likely around their wrist or ankle. I think at this point, hospitals are moving away from having a wristband just because it's a little bit more cumbersome and kind of can scratch the baby's face, and they're putting it on the ankle. Now, this not only matches the baby to you, so that way there's no, switched at birth scenarios happening here, but it's also a security feature, so that way if anyone tries to take the baby and leave like the labor and delivery floor, then it will sound an alarm. So I know that when I was in the hospital, this was actually one of the huge concerns that I had. You know how like mother's maternal instinct just goes like crazy. And when I was like a little bit worried about this, my nurse reassured me. And so that was a little comforting to my new mama heart to know that. Now, during this 1 hour golden bonding period, you'll also be encouraged to breastfeed if that's a route that you are planning to go with your specific child. And then after that 1 hour, then the hospital or the hospital staff will do more of a weight check and fingerprints and more vital checks on your baby that actually couldn't be performed skin to skin or during that golden hour period. One new mom, Lachey, writes, our hospital didn't have a nursery, so the nurses offered to take our baby to the nurses' station so I could get some rest. A lot of hospitals are moving towards a baby-friendly hospital policy, which basically encourages rooming in to help establish the bond and encourage breastfeeding success between mother and baby. So what this means for you is that the baby will most likely sleep in your room with you, and there's not going to be a formal nursery for the baby to go and stay while you get rest. But some nurses may still be willing to take the baby to the nursing station for you to get rest if you're kind of coming into a complication where you're not able to get rest and the baby has already been fed. Now, if you're interested in what all of the policies or recommendations are for baby-friendly hospitals, I'll link up some resources for you in the show notes. Now, during your stay at the hospital, not necessarily during the second hour during your stay, but over the next 1 to 2 days, even 3 days, depending on how long your hospital will keep you, you can expect to receive some maternal care. You're going to receive care for any postpartum issues such as bleeding, pain, or discomfort. You're also going to have your catheter removed if you had one inserted, like I did for a C-section or an epidural, and you're going to be encouraged to pee, which some moms have a really difficult challenge transitioning from having the catheter removed to reworking all of those muscles involved to be able to pee again. So if that's you, that's not unusual. Work with your nurses because they do have some tips and some suggestions to help kind of remind your body how to go. I'm not at all speaking from experience. And at this point, you may also have an opportunity to shower after bonding with your baby and during the course of your hospital stay. Now, you're also going to get some breastfeeding support. So you're going to receive any instructions on different breastfeeding positions. Your hospital may even have a lactation consultant on staff that will come in and help go through, and evaluate how you are doing your baby's latch, different positions to be able to feed your baby in to find the one that is most comfortable for you. They may evaluate your baby for a tongue tie or any additional issues with latching and how comfortable breastfeeding may be. They may also go through all of the different various aspects of your pump to make sure that you are fitted properly for flanges and make sure that you understand how to best support pumping for you and your baby. Now, I had an amazing lactation consultant at my hospital. She was just like an angel sent from heaven. And she made sure that I felt so comfortable when we were discharged to know what to do. In fact, she encouraged me to pump while I was still at the hospital so she could address any questions that I had while I was there, and to also increase the production of milk supply. So that way my body knew how much to make, and that way I wasn't going into a situation where my body may not be producing enough. And when you're at the hospital, most likely your milk will not have come in. You'll actually be producing colostrum. Hopefully I'm saying that right. Maybe it's colostrum. I don't know. So if you do pump, just be aware that you're not going to get very much. You may get a very little, but even a little bit that you get and you can feed to your baby in addition to nursing is only going to help set them up for success even more. So don't be alarmed if you pump at the hospital and you don't get very much at all. What can you expect for your baby's care? So your nurses are going to provide any guidance on infant care, including bathing, diapering, and feeding. Now, some parents may go several days or weeks before they actually give their baby a bath. So if that's something that you don't want your hospital to do, make sure you have that discussion with the nurses, because they may bring in certain supplies for you to be able to bathe your baby while you're there at the hospital. Your baby is going to go through different tests and screenings. So typically your baby is going to receive an additional physical exam. They're going to do a hearing screening and a blood test to screen for any genetic conditions. And I was really surprised how they could even do a hearing screening on your baby that's just they're sleeping swaddled up in a little crib, no words, no way of communicating. How do they know that this hearing screening is working? And they're going to, at least in my case, they put a headband around my baby's head, and then they ran a huge machine monitor type test. It was a really very short test. I think it lasted maybe 20 minutes. And they're essentially playing different tones, and then they're seeing how the baby's brain actually reacts to the different tones that the baby is hearing through the earphones or the sound monitor that they're running the screening test through. So your baby could even be asleep while they're running this screening test. Now, if you're a parent that is choosing to elect for any optional procedures like circumcision, your baby will have this procedure done during your hospital stay as well. And your hospital should be checking your baby for a tongue tie, as I mentioned previously. Now, if you're not aware if they're checking for a tongue tie, or if you're not sure if they already did, that's definitely something that you should be asking for, and just kind of see if your baby has a tongue tie or not, because they may be checking for it and they may not say anything. Even though I did ask my hospital to check for a tongue tie, some people that check for them may not know completely what to look for, or they may only be able to identify very extreme tongue or lip ties. So I would also encourage you to still take your baby to a pediatric dentist after your discharge to have them check to see if they have a tongue or lip tie, because even if you're having a very successful breastfeeding or nursing journey, that may still impact their ability to speak or develop their speech normally in the future if they're dealing with a tongue or lip tie, because it can impede their ability to make certain sounds or noises for their language development. Now, your baby may also receive some immunizations or treatments while you're there at the hospital. Some of these may be optional, so check not only with any local ordinances like state-specific guidelines, but also your individual hospital's policies to know which ones you can waive, so that way you are prepared ahead of time to let the hospital staff know which ones you want and which ones you do not want. Newborns typically receive the following vaccines at birth: hepatitis B, vitamin K, because they can't produce enough vitamin K on their own, an antibiotic eye ointment, and an RSV antibody if you didn't receive the RSV vaccines during your pregnancy. Now, I'll link up some resources that talks about these specific vaccines in the show notes, so that way you can look a little bit further into these details. You're also going to have general baby care while you're there at the hospital, such as learning how to swaddle. I had been around kids before, like I had several siblings growing up, and so I swaddled my baby dolls and swaddled them, but it is like an art to swaddle a newborn, and man, do they know how to do it. So if you're just like feeling like you're a little bit outside of your depth when it comes to swaddling your baby, man, your nurses got it covered, because there's like a multitude of different ways that you can swaddle a baby, and they can definitely teach you how to do it for your baby. They're going to care for the umbilical cord while you're there, and they're also going to teach you what to do to care for it at home. And then they're also going to be tracking how many diapers, the length of sleep that they're receiving, as well as how long they're feeding. Now, one of our moms, Clarissa, she actually can relate to this. She said the staff was constantly popping in for something: vitals, blood work, meal orders, trash, you name it. I felt like I was being interrogated every hour. With everything that's actually happening during your hospital stay, even if you have no visitors, it can feel like a revolving door of people just coming in and out. During my own hospital stay, it was just like a little overwhelming trying to remember, because, lack of sleep. Okay, when did you change your baby's diaper last? How long did they nurse for? When did they last nurse? So what I ended up doing is I just took the notes out on my phone, and I would document every single time we changed the baby's diaper and what type of diaper we were changing. Was it a pee diaper or was it a poop diaper? And then the time they started nursing, and then the time they stopped nursing, because they're going to want to know all of that, and the nurse won't be in your room every single time that actually occurs for your baby. So then when they come in to ask, you're not like sitting there trying to remember, how long ago was this? And with my lack of sleep, was this actually 20 minutes ago, or was it more like an hour ago? And was the duration like half an hour, or was it more like 5 minutes? So that was one thing that I learned during my hospital stay to just help with all of the care and tracking for babies' needs. You might be surprised that there's actually some paperwork involved while being at the hospital. So you're going to need to get a social security card for your baby. You'll need the social security card to claim them as a dependent on taxes, open a bank account, and if you or any of your child's grandparents want to purchase savings bonds, they'll need that social security number as well. Now, as soon as your baby is born, you don't necessarily just like automatically get one. You actually have to apply for a social security card. Since you're also going to have to provide certain information to fill out your baby's birth certificate at the hospital, this is also a great time to go ahead and start the application for the social security number. So to apply, you're going to need both parents' social security numbers. And if you don't know both parents, you can still apply for your child's social security card. You can look up the website for the Social Security Administration. I'll link it below so that way you can look into more of the finite details, as well as if for any reason you weren't actually able to apply for the Social Security card at the hospital while you were there, because that's kind of what happened to me with my firstborn. And I was a little lost when I realized, wait a minute, he never got a social security card. What do I do? So that way you can know where to go and what you need to do to actually apply if you're doing it after you get home from the hospital. You'll also want to call your insurance and set up any medical coverage for your baby. Let them know that you just had a baby and they can add your newest baby family member to your policy. So you don't want to get hit with a full priced hospital bill for your birth because you didn't add them to your policy fast enough. So typically, your insurance plan is going to have like a grace period for you to be able to add your baby to your plan. I don't know the specific dates. It can range. Some of them might be as long as 60 days. Some of them are as short as 30 days. But if you get it done in the hospital while you're there, at least it's done and you won't actually get home and get in the routine and then realize that you forgot that deadline and then have to pay that hospital bill in full. The information you'll need to provide to your insurance provider is your newborn's birth certificate, social security number, and possibly a verification of birth from the hospital. And you might be at this point thinking like, wait, I just applied for the social security number. I don't even have that. I don't have a birth certificate yet. And even though you don't have it, just calling and letting them know like, hey, I have my baby. They actually had a letter that I could provide to my hospital for them to fill it out and then fax it to my insurance company to say, yes, they have a new baby. This is a valid birth and this baby needs to be added to their insurance policy as a way of like verifying this baby was born. And then send the birth certificate and social security number at a later point. But at least they have it to add your baby to your policy. Now check your policy's details because they may need to have all of the information by the deadline for you to qualify of adding your baby to your policy. Now at this point, you'll also want to go ahead and make any insurance selections if you're changing your policy, if you're like on a single plan or a like you and a spouse plan and you need to change to a family plan, you'll make any plan selections or changes at this point as well. You'll also want to go ahead and call your human resources department so that way if you are eligible for any disability or any maternal leave, then that's the information that they'll need to go ahead and actually start your medical leave. In addition to taking care of your baby and trying to get some sleep and getting through all of the paperwork and all of the infant care, you may also have certain required education that your hospital provides. So your hospital may offer any classes or workshops on breastfeeding, infant safety, or newborn care. So for me specifically, the first time I gave birth to my son, we actually had to sign a form saying that, yes, we went through the training, we understand all of the risks and all of the information provided in the training, and also verify that we didn't have any questions about what we just watched before we actually could leave and be discharged from the hospital. So your hospital may have certain training requirements for new parents. Now, I did think it was very strange because we went to the same hospital for my second, and yet we didn't have to go through that training. So I don't know if their policies changed as a hospital or if they saw that we had completed that training as first-time parents, and so we had already met that requirement. So it's really up to you whether or not you want someone to come in and take pictures while you're at the hospital. I can say from my own experience, I would not have wanted someone at the hospital while I was there staying because it was just a flurry of people coming in and out in my attempt to breastfeed and get a routine in plus sleep. And I can just say that I had a really challenging time sleeping at the hospital. It was just a whole bunch of new sounds, a new environment. It wasn't quite as dark as I was used to, and I didn't have my own pillows, and there's new noises. So it's just really hard for your body to fully rest and be comfortable in a completely new environment. I think that some moms do really well. They feel like the hospital's super comfortable and they get so much rest and their baby is nursing well and everything's super easy for them. And then other moms have a completely separate experience where they're just like, it seems overwhelming to even have someone come visit. So I think if you're kind of questioning, maybe ask your friend if they're willing to just kind of be on call because you don't really know when you're going to be having your baby anyway. It might just be wise to evaluate that decision in the moment, depending on what your experience actually ends up being. What can you expect when it comes to discharging from the hospital? So before discharge, both you and your baby are going to have a final exam or evaluation. You're also going to have your postpartum follow-up scheduled with the hospital or with your medical provider. Your baby is also going to have a pediatrician appointment scheduled as well. I know for my hospital specifically, they would not allow us to be discharged until we had identified who our pediatrician was and we actually had a scheduled on the books appointment for our baby with the pediatrician. So it is helpful to know whom you plan to take your baby to before you even give birth. And of course, they're going to check your car seat. So they will most likely have a nurse walk with you out to your car and verify that your baby is strapped in accurately. And if you have a click in car seat, they have to hear the click to make sure that that car seat is secure before you're allowed to drive away. While it can feel like there's a lot going on, there can be plenty of time for snuggles too. But if you're finding that you're not getting the rest that you need, that can all change once you're home. In the words of this experienced mom, Adriana, she says, "Our littlest one was the sweetest baby ever, barely cried. Between all the interruptions, the lack of sleep and exhaustion, I was the one who was a mess. Once I got home, I felt so much better. Turns out sleep can work wonders." If you're a mom who's already had an experience at the hospital, I would just like to invite you to join today's conversation and drop any of your experiences or thoughts in the comments for Bella or any other mom that comes across this episode. But now that you know what to expect at the hospital, you may be wondering how much your birth will cost. If you are, I'll link up that episode for you next. Until we hang out again, create your own heart home.